Good evening, I'm Pia Hontiveros. You're watching On the Record. Over 2 million overseas Filipino workers endure dangerous living conditions and risks to pursue a dream, but sometimes it turns into a nightmare. In Kuwait, 7 household service workers deployed in 2016 are dead on top of a newly discovered OFW whose body was kept in a freezer for over a year. After suspending deployment to the country, the president mulls a ban. He is the president in his own words.
Let me be blunt about this because Kuwait has always been an ally. But please do something about it and for the other countries in the Middle East. I hope that you'd listen to me because I mean well. But I will never, never, never again tolerate one more incident of rape to the point of committing suicide, jumping out of the window. That is something the Filipino people cannot stomach.
But a total ban could cost 37.5 billion pesos in remittances and over hundreds of thousands of jobs. OFWs are hailed as modern heroes, but do they get the support they deserve? Joining us tonight, Philippine Overseas Employment Administration Deputy Administrator Joyce Sanchez, Representative Ron Salo, the Overseas Workers Affairs Committee member in the House, and also a member of the technical working group that will create the, what is that, Representative Salo, Department of Migration and Development, Trade Union Congress of the Philippines, Shirley Yorong, and Jerome Alcantara, Policy Director for the Blas Ople Policy Center. Thank you very much, ladies, gentlemen, for being here. Salamat po. Well, let's begin with this. Let's talk about this, the suspension that President Duterte ordered for the deployment of OFWs to Kuwait because of all these reports of abuse. So, and now he's talking about a threat to do the same for the rest of the Middle East. Where are we in this regard, ma'am?
Secretary Sylvester Bello III, our Secretary of Labor, issued the Administrative Order 26 last January 29 on the suspension of processing of overseas employment certificate for all the new hires bound for Kuwait workers.
Do we have numbers, ma'am, when we talk about suspension of processing of licenses? Do we have an idea how many?
We have in the pipeline when the suspension order issued by the Secretary. So it's more or less on the pipeline is 3,000 to 5,000 workers bound for Kuwait.
3,000 to 5,000 workers bound for Kuwait.
On the pipeline.
All right. And meron po ba silang mga sinasabi na, do you get word about, ano yung mga sentiments nila nung nalaman nila ito na hindi sila makakaalis?
Of course, mixed yung sentiments ng mga workers. There are some na okay lang para protected sila when they will be deployed to Kuwait.
Dahil natakot nga naman sila.
Yes, and others, of course, ito kasi yung bread and butter nila, they wanted to work abroad. Despite or in spite of that situation. Parang sinasabi nila na we will try our luck. Yun yung mga sinasabi naman na others na hindi, they are not allowed to be processed by POEA.
Talagang pakikipagsapalaran.
Pakikipagsapalaran.
Medyo kapit sa patalim din yung ganito, no?
Oo, Miss Pia.
Pag ganyan, yung 3,000 to 5,000, meron po bang nag-a-attempt na umalis pa rin at pumunta pa rin sa Kuwait in spite of this suspension of the deployment?
Kung mag-a-attempt sila, illegal na yun.
Oo nga.
Kasi,
so do you have information in that regard? Meron po bang ganon? There might be some who are desperate.
Unless na they will go out of the country on a tourist visa. But dangerous on their part if they will went out the country na hindi sila legal na aalis.
Okay. Representative Ron Salo, would you know of anyone, meron po bang minsan may dumudulog sa Kongreso, nagsusumbong, Meron po ba kayong constituents or meron po ba kayong kilala or even for our other guests who have expressed their sentiments about how they feel about this deployment suspension?
As of the moment, wala pa. Of course, marami akong nare-receive actually nakikipagkaibigan sa akin through Messenger. But basically, these are more from the Saudi Arabia. Ito yung mga naputulan ng kontrata or di ba nagkaroon tayo last time, hanggang ngayon, yung mga kontrata nila na stop because of the ongoing crisis dun sa Saudi Arabia. But with respect to Kuwait, dahil bago lang naman po ito, wala pa masyado sa ngayon. But I suppose, of course, tatanungin natin siguro, ano ba exactly yung profile ng mga nandun pupunta sa Kuwait?
Okay. Shirley Yorong, can you tell us if you've heard of, ano ba yung mga sentiments? Meron po bang nagsasabi sa inyo?
Yeah, actually, well, without specifying kung sino sila, but yung mga members namin, if one goes abroad, pinapangutang na po kasi nila yon. Even yung placement or pagkuha ng passport or whatever na payments doon sa processing and getting a visa. So, if
How
after
much
they
pala
have...
do they spend pag ganyan?
malaki.
Rough estimate.
Yung nakakausap namin na ay mga 30 minsan, 30, 50. So you can see a situation wherein siya na kasi yung hope, di ba? So we will invest, the family will invest, for example, ibenta na si Calabao or ibenta na si piece of land just to go through the process and be qualified or to go or to leave. Then after that, tapos pagka hindi pala matuloy, bukod doon sa nakakahiya, dahil pinamalita na minsan nag-celebrate pa, nagdispisida pa, oo, ganyan. So, isa pa doon, yung gastos, paano babayaran yon na hoping na makareceive siya in dollars and then yun pala ang ending noon ay wala ring work. So, yung talking about, meron bang pumupunta pa rin? Even if it's illegal, meron. Hindi lang natin nalalaman kung ilan sila, pero marami sila.
Merong pumunta ngayon?
Even, not necessarily...
January 29 pa lang yung...
Well, not necessarily dahil doon sa suspension, but
Many other instances,
marami pa rin. Kasi wala namang pupunta.
Yeah.
Ang sinasabi kasi in general, makipagsapalaran na lang ako. It's okay na makipagsapalaran kaysa sa dito na titingnan ko lang na namamatay na sa gutom yung aking pamilya. Na parang wala akong magagawa para lang matulungan sila, mabigyan man lang ng enough food on the table, parang ganyan. So doon na lang makipagsapalaran.
Okay.
So desperate yung...
Desperate times. Jerome Alcantara of the Blas Ople Policy Center.
Yes, actually, tingnan natin yung profile din siguro nung tatamaan ng deployment ban to Kuwait. Ang large percentage of workers who are being deployed to Kuwait are household service workers.
Yeah.
So, in part, we support the deployment ban because we are sending out workers to the most vulnerable profession that we can think of.
Correct.
No?
How much do they earn usually sa Kuwait?
Ang minimum po nila is $400, pero
$400 a month, which is about a little less than 20,000.
Yeah, a little less than 20,000. And yung reality, supposedly po, under the law, kapag domestic worker ka, you're not supposed to spend for your deployment. So, sagot dapat ng employer mo yung visa fees, yung medical fees. Pero yung napapansin po kasi namin, pataas ng pataas yung cost of deployment. Like, yung Kuwait Embassy, nagtaas sila ng visa fee nila from $250 to $3,500. And then
$250 to $3,500. So they're making it difficult.
Actually, ginagawa ho kasing negosyo talaga rin. Kaya lalong napupunta po sa vulnerable position yung mga workers natin. Kasi nininegosyo sila bago pa sila makaalis ng bansa.
Right.
So kahit na hindi ho bayaran hindi sila yung nagbabayad ng deployment expenses nila. Pagdating dun sa Kuwait, yung mga employers nila, iniisip, ang laki na ng investment ko rito So talagang kailangan, sasagarin ko tong worker na to. And it shows din naman po, kahaliit-liit na bansa ng Kuwait. Pero at any given time, there will be 300 to 400 domestic workers na nandoon sa shelter natin as runaways. So, yun siguro din yung tumama sa presidente natin. Napakaliit na bansa nito. Pero napakarami ng cases ng ng abuse for a very small country.
And in one sentence, why? For a very small country, why so many cases of abuse?
Siguro part of na rin, dahil nga sa malaki na investment nila, ang trato na dun sa mga workers natin, parang pag-aari na nila. And we can see it in the past din, in other Middle East countries. Nung pong nagkaroon ng gyera sa Syria, when they were attacked. Also, nung Lebanon crisis, yung pong mga domestic workers natin, tinatago sila sa mga apartments because they are treated as equipment, as part of furniture. So umaalis na yun, nag-evacuate na yung mga employers nila, sila naiiwan pa rin po. So there is that mindset for domestic workers also.
Pag-aari kasi, they invested so much. Ano. The body of a supposed Filipino was found inside a freezer in Kuwait. The full story later after the break. Watching on the record, a body believed to be that of a Filipinas was found in an apartment in Al Shaab area in Kuwait. In a report by the Arab Times, authorities say the body of the housemaid may have been kept in a freezer for over a year. Preliminary investigation showed the housemaid's Lebanese sponsor was wanted for cases related to falsified checks. It adds there were traces on the body indicating death by strangulation and torture. Ex-OFW party list representative John Bertiz confirms the body is now with the Kuwaiti police for forensic examination and an autopsy. Bertiz is calling for a total ban on worker deployment to Kuwait. In January, the Labor Department suspended the deployment of OFWs to Kuwait in the wake of reports of abuse and deaths. In a media briefing this morning, presidential spokesman Harry Roque said President Duterte has plans to visit Kuwait. Let's go back to our discussion with our guests here this evening. Let's talk about Congressman Representative Salono. You're a member of this technical working group to create
I'm actually one of the co-chairs because it's a joint committee between the department or the Committee on Foreign Affairs as well as the government organization. Basically, this particular proposal to create this particular department. We call it Department of Migration and Development, which will be comprised of the POA and the OWA, as well as various agencies of the government that are dealing with the concerns of the OFWs.
And are we saying that the creation of this department will solve the problems of the OFWs, will afford better protection for them, whether they are documented or undocumented? Baba ang kaso ng pang-aabuso sa kanila because we have a department na nakatutok sa kanila?
Basically, those are among the objectives of this particular bill. Actually, this is one of the priority measures also of the President. So we actually load the President for really putting into his priority the welfare of our OFWs. Actually, this ban on deployment will load the President in taking really the stand to ensure that our Filipinos are protected overseas. Dito, ang sinasabi po natin sa department nito, it may not exactly solve all. It's not a panacea, of course, given that. But of course, we intend to at least address certain concerns of the OFWs, particularly sa ngayon, yung pag-alis po nila, ang concern nga po talaga nila because they're dealing with various departments or offices of the government. Pwede namang itong isa na lang yung mag-aasikaso, and which will be the Department of Migration Development, which one we're creating, as well as yung mga complaints na katulad nito. Nangyayari po sa kasalukuyan, yung pagtuturuan. It's a question of sinong may jurisdiction, sino talaga ang may opisina na dapat na mag-handle po niyan. For example, nalala po natin na nagkaroon po ng concern sa Saudi Arabia, hanggang ngayon concern pa rin, na naputulan ng kontrata o nawalan ng kontrata yung mga Pilipino na nandoon. Ang concern po nila, kanino sila talaga exactly magpupunta at mag-a-address ng kailang concern. So, nandyan ang Department of Foreign Affairs, nandyan ang OWA, nandyan ang POA, nandyan din ang Department of Labor, and hindi exactly nila malaman, pumunta din ang DSWD po ron. So, basically, so many departments are in charge of it. But, nung tinatanong na po namin, na nagkaroon po kami ng hearing po doon, sino ba talaga ang in charge? Sino ba talaga ang top of all this situation? Tinanong lang po namin, ilan ba talaga ang affected? Hindi kami mabigyan exactly ng tamang sagot. So, these are among the concerns that we're trying to address in this particular
And you're saying because you're going to put all these agencies under one roof, then wala nang turuan? Ganun ba yun? Or magtuturuan ng department?
Maaaring within the department magtuturuan, but at least may isang secretary na nagkukompas. And yung concern po natin na accountability, malinaw. Diba? Kapag concern yan ng OFWs, imagine yung mga OFWs po natin or Filipinos abroad, there are more than around 11 million. How many are there? per day. So basically,
11 million documented, undocumented, combination, what?
Documented.
Documented 11 million, undocumented.
Doble pa ata.
so imagine that if we are 100 million Filipinos, so that's basically more than 10% of Filipinos.
Yeah.
And yet, wala tayong isang departamento na nag-handle ng kailang mga concerns. So these are among the concerns that we're trying to address in this particular measure that we're discussing in Congress.
How does the TUCP and the Blas Ople Policy Center look at this? In short and simple language, having one department under whose roof all these agencies
Yeah.
are going to be. Is this going to solve?
Well, as what the good congressman is saying, we're not hoping that it will solve. But actually, we are expecting that somehow the interventions would be preventive rather than after the fact or reactive. So,
or curative, ano?
oh yeah, because we are saying that if we can prevent, the coming in or the OFWs experiencing these abuses and coming home patay na or bugbog na or ganyan. So, kasi too late na pagka after the fact mo, the damage has been done.
Yeah.
And we are not talking only of the person himself or herself, but actually an entire family.
Right.
Kasi normally siya ang
So how will
breadwinner.
this one department prevent OFW abuse?
Then we are, for example, talking about database. So perhaps in one roof, then the database could be made available to all the departments concerned.
Yeah.
Easier. Maybe the information could be easily accessible by people involved in the programs or the interventions that are passed.
Jerome, first.
We support the Department of Migration and Development, and we're working closely with the legislators on that. Ang sa amin, 2 points Isang example, sa Kuwait din, anniversary na ho ng pagbitay dun sa isang Pilipina, si Jakatia Pawa. Up to the last minute, profess niya, innocent siya. Ang nag-strike sa amin doon, binitay siya, tumawag kami sa mga agencies ng government, hindi pa nila alam na nabitay na. So, and in the first place, hindi siya dapat napunta dun sa sitwasyon na yon kung yung ahensya nag-uusap-usap na, may Pilipina rito, may kaso, kailangan ng abogado. Dun sa precinct level pa lang o habang iniimbestigahan pa lang. It shouldn't have gone to the, napunta siya sa death row. Kung nag-uusap-usap lang ng maayos during that time at may isang nagkukumpas.
Oo.
Second po.
Was she documented, undocumented?
Documented.
Yeah,
documented.
Okay.
Second point, masyadong complex yung yung issue ng mga Filipino migrant workers, yung sa Saudi Arabia, kaya na-stranded yung mga workers doon kasi biglang bumagsak yung presyo ng langis, nalulugi yung gobyerno ng Saudi, nagpuputol ng kontrata doon sa mga construction firms na contractors nila. Ang majority ng employees, Pilipino. Ngayon, 3 years before that, winawarningan na ho yung government ng mga expats, ng mga NGOs. Ano yan? Mula sa 120, bumabagsak sa 20 yung presyo ng langis. Malaki tama niya sa ekonomiya ng Saudi. Nagna-nationalize yung Saudi, tinatanggal yung mga Pilipino kasi gusto nila yung mga citizens nila yung nandoon. So, it's happening pero no one is reacting. No? Kasi
Ito na nga yung sinasabing preventive sana.
yeah, and
If there had been someone who was watching everything.
yeah.
Or we say proactive.
Proactive na nga.
yung
Oo,
gobyerno
oo,
natin.
oo.
And someone who is
Someone who's keeping track of everything that's
yeah, and
happening. that
who
could
is
affect-
paboritong sinasabi ni nung presidente namin, si Ms. Susan Ople, someone who is putting all of the pieces together. Kasi from an untrained eye, kapag casual observer ka lang, parang hindi related yung rise ng nationalism sa Europe, yung Brexit, yung pagpanalo ni Donald Trump sa US, doon sa presyo ng langis sa Middle East. No, pero all of that has an profound impact on Filipino workers. No?
Okay, we're going to get the view of the POEA naman dito sa Department of Migration. We have about 30 seconds to go before we go to a break, ma'am. Kaya niyo po?
Just a
Kasi
brief
tuloy natin mamaya.
regarding the creation of the Department
Yes.
of
Migration.
Migration and Development. We, on the side of the government as POEA, we have already one country team approach wherein there is DFA, where there is OWA, Department of Labor and Employment. So the Department of Labor and Employment, we are under the Department of Labor. When concerns the welfare of the overseas overseas workers, of course, OWA will handle that. And in case of regulation, POEA would handle that, the worker-employer relationship.
So you're saying that you don't like the idea of a Department of Labor and
Yes.
Department of Migration?
Yes, the system is, we have also linkages. The
So
system.
hindi natin kailangan itong Department of Migration?
Oh, para sa amin, sa
Hindi na
government.
kailangan.
Kasi OWA is functioning very well, as well as POEA. And of course, we are under the Department of Labor and Employment.
Alright.
And under the Department of Labor and Employment, we have Philippine Overseas Labor Offices na siya yung nagkakalinga at tumutulong sa ating mga overseas workers.
All right. When we return, a netizen wants a total ban on sending household workers to the Middle East. That and other comments on social media. You're watching On the Record only here on CNN Philippines. Welcome back. Netizens are also joining our conversation on Facebook. Marian Laurena hopes there will be a total ban on sending household workers to the Middle East. Rodolfo Araneta somewhat agrees, telling OFW's, quote, "Kung ayaw mong maabuso sa abroad, wag ka pumunta dyan," unquote. But for Emmanuel Duca, the government first has to identify and stop illegal recruiters from sending workers abroad, because these Filipinos are the ones always in danger most of the time. For more on this story, visit our website at cnnphilippines.com or follow us on social media at CNN Philippines. Let's go back to our discussion. You know, itong mga abuse, actually it's a story that repeats itself. It's a never-ending epic story of struggle for these thousands of documented and undocumented. Like you said a while ago, di ba? Hindi lang ito 10, 11 million. Kung bilangin pa natin undocumented, doble na, no?
Yeah.
So we have all these. Is there anything new that comes out, or is this just para bang
Palala ka. Palala po yung sitwasyon.
Palala ng
Yeah.
palala.
Opo.
Like how?
Mas marami pa rin, even with the worst experiences and stories that we heard. Since wala kasing, kami, we are always saying na sana yung pag-migrate or to go abroad to look for a job or to work, ay sana talagang totoo siyang choice na lang. That means to say that,
In other
because,
words,
if there
Parang
are...
hindi siya pursado.
Opo, kasi normally kasi ang nangyayari, it's they are forced to go there because there's no option. Parang last choice na lang nila. Kaya even if it's illegal or undocumented sila, but still walang ibang option, di sige na lang, parang ganyan. So we are actually hoping na somehow actually ito yung namin request na sana pwedeng, di ba, mahilig tayong magbenta na, this X country is looking for 100,000 workers, tapos ang range ng monthly pay niya ay 50,000 to 100,000. Ang sana, since kung mahirap ka, di syempre, wow, ganun kalaki, malaking tulong sa akin yan. But if parang itabi mo dito, okay, but in this country X, ganito na kadami yung Pilipino na naabuso, umuwi na patay, ganyan, napalitan yung kontrata, ang in-applyan niya ay sales lady siya, pagdating doon ay naging kasambahay siya, ganyan. Because this information is necessary for the person himself, to decide na, ay, pagpupunta pala ako doon, there is this opportunity that I will earn 100,000 per month, but there is also this danger,
downside,
na pwede palang hindi naman totoo yung kontrata. And then, baka imbes na makatulong, naging perwisyo pa ako or namatay pa ako. Parang gano'n.
Does it help if the worker is documented as opposed to undocumented? Because earlier you were saying, pareho din, may naaabuso din naman na dokumentado, hindi ba?
Yeah, but of course better. Yeah, better if documented. And we are
Because
saying...
if he or she gets into trouble, the government, our Philippine government...
at least may record kasi siya, masusundan.
So mas mahirap talaga yung undocumented because then it becomes
Nobody
an
knows.
issue. It becomes an issue also of, well, that country, that host country has its own laws.
Correct.
Right?
Yeah. And
Okay.
even yung documented, hindi naman assurance
Actually, in
na.
practical terms kasi, kapag documented ka, pagka-problema ka, yung agency mo, dapat kaya kang i-pull out doon sa trabaho mo.
Correct.
Oo. Kung undocumented ka, walang agency na habulin sila
tutulong sa'yo
DA.
agad.
Wala.
Wala pwedeng puntahan.
Hindi alam na saan
Which
ka na.
means, kasi if you are documented, pagka nagka-problema ka sa employer mo, ang pwedeng sumagot dito yung Licensed Recruitment Agency kasi may tinatawag tayong JSL, Joint Solidary Liabilities.
Okay.
Kung hindi, ang hahabulin nito dito ay yung
Yeah.
kapartner niya na agency dito sa
Okay, my last question, the second to the last. What kind of an effect does a tough-talking president like Rodrigo Duterte have on, safety? Are our workers abroad safer because we have President Duterte talking like that? Nakakatulong ba?
Sa akin, yes.
Yeah.
Personally, nakita naman natin that immediately the president was able and willing to stop or suspend deployment to Kuwait. So it sends really a good signal to them na hindi po pwede ganito. It's not as business as usual. Na inaabuso na okay lang.
Yeah.
Diba?
So,
Well,
natakot ang Kuwait din, ganon, na mawawalan sila ng...
But I suppose, based on the news also, nakipag-usap yung embahada ng Kuwait sa Secretary ng Labor at the same time, noting na magiging maayos. So, ang gusto rin sana natin at sinususugan natin yung action ng Presidente to really enter into more bilateral agreements that will provide better protection to our Philippines.
Okay, we have 1.5 minutes and I want to go to the last question because nabanggit din ito, no, na there are 300,000 jobs available daw sa China. Do we have any information about this that we can talk about tonight? No? Kasi it sounds very promising, hindi ba? And syempre, ang iisipin ng mga tao, OFW, ang Middle East, ang layo-layo, di ba? China, 4.5 hours away lang, di ba? Tapos booming ang economy, ganon. Do we have anything on that, ma'am?
Yung sinasabi na 300,000, we have to study on that very well. The packages and of course the bilateral agreements na well protected ang ating
So what kind of
Filipino
jobs are
workers.
these? Where in China? What kind of companies? Do we know?
Actually, wala pa.
Wala pa?
Talagang...
So this was an offshoot of what? Yung mga napirmahan ng mga agreements nung pumunta si President Duterte sa China?
Tinitignan na merong prospective na trabaho sa China. But yung mga trabaho, hindi pa natin pwedeng sabihin kasi kailangan pa nating pag-aralan para wala nang naaabuso na OFWs natin.
Okay, Representative Salo or Shirley Yorong or Jerome Alcantara, is there any information about these supposed available jobs in China?
Personally, wala pa. Pero susugan ko yung sinasabi ni Ma'am Joyce na dapat ayusin natin muna ngayon yung bilateral agreement natin with China. Iayos natin lahat, ilatag para the moment na klaro na yung 300,000 na yan, deploy ka agad tayo.
Oo. At dapat talaga dokumentado because we have a problem if you send undocumented to China.
At saka wag naman sana doon sa sector. Wag na nating patulan yung sa sector na very vulnerable. We have
household
unskilled workers, 'di ba? Kasi we have more than enough experiences to show na hindi naman talaga siya kumbaga, wag na natin laging i-equate doon sa magkanong dollars yan na na-contribute doon sa economy, 'di ba?
Actually, sa government side natin, hindi naman natin gusto na yung vulnerable skills.
Yes.
So and of course, based on sa pronouncement ng ating presidente, we have to look into that, yung sinasabi.
Okay.
But we should
Sincero ang gobyerno about that.
Alright, I wish we had more time, pero mag-part 2 na lang tayo siguro. So thank you very much to our guests tonight, POEA Deputy Administrator Joy Sanchez, Representative Ron Salo, Shirley Yorong of TCP, and Jerome Alcantara, Blas Ople Policy Center. Maraming salamat. Thank you for being with us. That is it for tonight. Thank you for your time. See you again here on the Record next Thursday.